Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? Well, it's Wednesday. It's a beautiful Wednesday afternoon here in Oshawa. It's sunny, lovely breeze out there. If anyone is at home on their computers or smartphones or tablets or whatever you might have, and you're dropping by to say hi and make some art with us today, thank you for that. Because that outside, wow, it's lovely. Permission to go outside and watch this later once it's been archived. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today, whether you're watching us live or perhaps you are tuning in once this has been archived. It's a pleasure to be here, of course, as always. This Wednesday afternoon is when I host an hour and a half of art making here on Facebook for anyone who wants to join in. Now, you can watch or listen. You don't have to do anything else other than that if that's what's helping you feel inspired or creative. But you can also, create along with me if you like. Maybe you've got some projects on hand that you want to finish up or catch up on. Maybe you've gathered some supplies, some simple supplies. You don't need a whole lot to make something interesting. And perhaps you're going to work on something new today. Take some creative risks. All are welcome, and all art forms, all expressive modalities, of course, they're welcome as well. Now, if you are watching, please say hi if you feel comfortable doing so. Let me know what you're working on. Share projects. You can share pictures or links to things you're working on with that creative community in the chat, in the comment section below. But again, if you just feel like hanging out in the background and appreciating everything, that's okay too. But do say hello. And let me know if you're out there and if you're watching and if you're appreciating and enjoying. And don't feel shy about sharing what you're working on and shining a light on what you're doing. Hey, Amanda. Amanda, it's so great to see you. Amanda says, "Hi, I'm out and about." That's a very Canadian phrase right there, out and about. It's so great to know you're there, Amanda, and I'm glad you're enjoying some of this sunshine. And I'm glad you've dropped by to say hi. That's lovely. Thank you. It doesn't take a lot, folks. And now this is one of the ways our community can stay connected, even though we might be so spread apart and we don't have those places and spaces to gather right now. This, along with other virtual art hives that other art hives are doing across the country, across the world, it gives us a way to stay connected and keep touch with one another. Oh, and it is hot outside, Amanda. You're right. I was out with Alice, my dog, my hound dog, for a little while, and it's hot. Yeah, so if you are outside, I hope you have some water. I hope you have a nice shady spot to be, just to sit and relax and absorb and appreciate this beautiful weather that we're having, because goodness knows, it can suddenly overwhelm you when you're out there. Everything's going great until it's not going great. So I'm so glad that you're taking care of yourself. And Wendy, hello, Wendy. How are you doing? Wendy, who's just shared some beautiful art supply donations with us. So excited about that. Some interesting things that we can use for fundraising later on, perhaps. Lovely, lovely, lovely. I have to say thank you to everyone who's watching or listening, whether you contribute in material donations or financial contributions, or you just contribute by taking part in our events and activities. All of it counts, and I appreciate it so very much. Because without you, there is no Living Room Community Art Studio. I think I've said that a few times before, but I do truly mean it. And some of you may have noticed there is a fundraiser on our Facebook page hosted by the fabulous Danny Crosby, who is an artist and an educator. And this is a part of the community collaboration course we do every year with Durham College third year students. And this has been a very unusual year for them. And it doesn't stop Danny and it doesn't stop her students. They're out there and they are all doing really, really cool things. So if you can support us through that fundraiser on Facebook, please feel free. But if you don't feel up to it or you can't right now, that's totally okay too. I want to give everyone permission to do what's best for them, to take care of their own needs. Prioritize your own self-care wherever you might be, whoever you might be. That makes sense? Yeah? Okay. And of course, if you want to donate but don't want to do it through Facebook, you can also do it through Canada Helps. We have a Canada Helps page that you can find us on where you will get a tax receipt for any financial donations, which is awesome. Like, that's a really cool thing. And we also have a Patreon page for folks who want to subscribe to have little treats every month and, different kind of perks throughout the year. It's just something small and simple, and we try to keep on top of and make as interesting as can be. But you know what? I guess what I'm saying is, If you want to support the Living Room project, there are so many ways to do it, and we appreciate all the ways it's done. So feel free to share and let me know what you're working on out there, okay? I'm going to click over now to the next window. And yeah, I feel like, I don't know if anyone else out there has been experiencing this, but this week has been a little tough. I've been a little tired, not just tired, weary. Yeah? I don't know, is anyone else able to relate to that this week? And I don't know if it's this week, there's something special about this week, or if it's just part of the natural course of things for me and my mental health and wellness. But it's been a tricky week taking care of things and reminding myself if I'm feeling really low, I need to step back and I need to do something for myself so I can feel balanced, so I can feel grounded. Oh, Wendy, lovely. And this always helps me feel grounded, hearing about what other people are working on. Wendy is working on beading and playing with stamps. Oh, together? I know there is some fantastic jewelry out there that people have been making, and not just jewelry, but different kinds of art that you can hang or display, or found object art, textile art, jewelry art that involves stamping beads. I've never done that. I've never stamped homemade beads. But I did see, Wendy, on your Instagram that you've been making some paper beads. So it does make me think if perhaps you're combining the two art forms. Oh, that's exciting. Yes. Pictures if you feel comfortable in the show and tell post after our live stream is done. I myself am going to be weaving today and working with paper weaving. I've been working on a little project we're putting together for the Durham region summer camp in a box kit. So I'll give you a little teaser about what that is. So anyone who's out there, families, small kids, I think the age range they're aiming for is 6 to 10 or 11. But this amazing project, all these organizations are coming together to create things, little activity kits that we can put together to share with children out in the community. So this is what the Living Room is doing. We're creating a little rainbow paper plate weaving kit, which is super fun and sweet and nice and bright for the summer. But also, of course, like it crosses over with lots of things like science, 2S LGBTQ Pride Month, things like that, and just fun because it's colorful. So this is what I've been working on today. And as I was weaving, I was like, oh, I forgot how nice it feels to weave. I don't feel like weaving with yarn exclusively or fiber right now, but I thought, you know what? I do think working with paper, something with structure, would be good for me and good for my brain. And Wendy says, oh, following up on that question I asked, I'm so nosy, aren't I? Wendy says, playing with what I have, but not sure what it will be. That's even better. Even better, it's an art adventure, my favorite kind. I'm a little bit in that experimental place myself right now. It's been a long time since I've done any paper weaving. I think I did a tissue paper weaving early on in the pandemic with folks, playing with layers of tissue paper and Mod Podge and texture and transparency. This time it's a little different. I'm hearkening back to something that I did when I was in art therapy school. And it was a part of my final project that we had to do, not the thesis project, but kind of a reflective project about our experience of the program and our learning and our growth and the insights we'd had along the way. And so one of the pieces that I did to explain that, or to kind of capture that, to dialogue with it, was a paper weaving. So I'm going to do that today. And the bottom layer, I think, you'll notice that I did a lot of stuff before starting the live stream because I wanted to play with it and I wanted to complete the weaving, or I complete it as much as I possibly could during this time period. And as you know, sometimes I get chatty and I get behind on my projects. So I wanted to make sure that I had something solid, a solid leaping off point towards the end of the live stream, because there's no rush to finish. No one has to finish what they're working on in this time, right? We're all a work in progress. Person and art. Art and person? Character. Something is in this piece. I think the colors that I've put on this, which will be the background to the weaving, the base, or I believe, what is it? I always mix up the weft and the warp of a piece. I think this is the lengthwise is the warp, and I think this is the weft. Textile fiber arts people out there, weavers, you let me know if I am wrong. Let me know if I've got it backwards. Keep me accountable. But as I was creating this piece, I realized that it was kind of holding a lot of stuff for me. Holding some stress, holding some emotion. And then I like the idea. I've been playing with this theme a lot over the last couple of months, of layers and the idea of what's underneath, what's on top, what's on the surface, what happens if we dig. So I'm going to continue with that theme today. And perhaps, if I have enough time, what I'd like to do is integrate some poetry into this piece as well. Or maybe messages would be a better way of describing it. Messages to self, words. The kind of things that I might need to hear or see when I'm having one of those more struggly moments. And again, I share my struggling moments not necessarily because I need help with fixing them. Although help is always a wonderful thing. And I'm lucky. I have a lot of resources in my life. But I don't want to make anyone out there feel like they have to make me feel better. I actually like the idea of exploring those things and helping myself feel better, but in a witnessing space with folks to witness this. And perhaps if it helps me to talk about it, it might help you to talk about it too. Hello, hello, hello. So I'm seeing Simone is there, perhaps a gallery card. Okay, Simone, welcome, first of all. So great to see you. I'd love to learn more, and for myself, but also for the community. Can you share a little bit more about what a gallery card is? Because I know there's so many different kinds of cards out there. Artist cards, artist trading cards, ATCs. Everything comes with its own kind of cool little nickname. But there's so much amazing stuff out there. Yes, and Simone is saying yes, vulnerability. Yeah, I think if it's speaking to that piece about sharing and witnessing, that it's okay to be vulnerable, especially if you're lucky enough to have a safe place to be with other people, to share that. And sometimes just allowing that to be shown, allowing the vulnerability or the weariness to make its voice heard can be enough on its own to make space for something new. And we've talked about that before, I think, as well. But I love hearing other people's thoughts on that as well, obviously. And Simone's saying, creating a gallery card to accompany your piece. Interesting. Including a title and a bit about your piece. In prose, a poem, or a few sentences as long, as short as you feel. I love that. I love, 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 love that. Because that's the conversation about sharing your art with the world is, of course, that is a whole other conversation, isn't it? I mean, related, separate, but related. Hey, Carlos, how are you doing? Howdy to you too. And Carlos says, me likey this piece. Colorful colors on a rainy canvas window pane. Very beautiful. And yes, to safe sadness space, that space to be vulnerable and fragile can be liberating. Absolutely. And I think I really, really loved Carlos on that note. If I may share, you shared such a beautiful story on your page. I think it was another author, another artwork. But the farmer with the two buckets full of water, one is full and the other has a hole in it. And that's just, I love that so much. If you could, I don't know if we can share that in the comments, but certainly the concept of the leakiness from one bucket actually, rather than being something that was wasted, helped. Oh, there's a wind outside. Oh my goodness. Folks, sorry, distracted by nature. Wowza, that's a lot of sudden wind. That's exciting and strange. I feel like Dorothy. What's happening here? Okay, no, I'm still here, all is well. Yes, so the one bucket, which is efficient, supposedly and gets the job done in one part of this farmer's field. The other bucket feels bad. I'm making a horrible botch of telling this story. But the truth is that even though that bucket had a hole in it, it still served a purpose and helped water all the wonderful flowers and plants along the path to that farmer's field, which is equally important. All the middle spaces, all the parts of ourselves that need to be nurtured and cared for. And we don't always recognize the need for that in the moment. We might be thinking about the so-called big picture, when the small pictures, the little pictures matter too. And I think sometimes the little pictures do, the stories they tell are about vulnerability, imperfection, lovely, lovely flaws that make us human and make us interesting. And what am I doing now? I'm just coming in with some pencil to shade in some of these areas, to add some gray. I might erase it or smooth it out later. I just felt called to do this. I can't even explain why. But artist cards to tell the story, to help give shape and meaning to what we've created are so important, especially, there's that line of thought that once you create a work of art, regardless of what it is, a song, a movie, a painting, a collage, jewelry, if it holds meaning for you, the artist, the maker, that there is a strange thing that happens when we release it into the world and it suddenly is owned by someone else in a way. They get to project what they're feeling and seeing and thinking onto the piece. And sometimes what we hope others will see in the piece might get lost. Some artists are fine with that. Other artists, it's important to have that artist card there to help give a little point, a little direction, a little nudge. And the artist gallery card can accompany that picture wherever it goes, or that work of art wherever it goes. And then Carlos says, yeah, that leaking bucket inadvertently providing sustenance to that around it was hauntingly beautiful and kind of reaffirming that it's okay to be broken. We can impact on our environment in unseen ways. It really resonated, and I love that so many folks have liked and shared it. I'll find where I got it from. I think the artist was Russell Brunson. Russell Brunson. Okay, that sounds familiar. Yeah, it was beautiful. I loved it. And I think each one of us can relate in our own ways. And hello, Laura. And hello, Emily. How you doing, Em? How's it going today? Hope school has been good. Hope you've been studying hard. Who am I to tell you to study hard, Emily? I know you study hard. I know you got a good brain. You've got an excellent brain, just like your mom. And and that's a lovely response to Carlos from Simone saying, wildflowers don't care where they grow. You're right. They just need whatever is there. If the soil is right for them, they will grow and they will thrive. It's us humans who sometimes have a problem about where they pop up. Lovely. So making space today, creating, working my way perhaps out of the weariness. But if I'm not out of the weariness, perhaps I'll understand it a little bit more when I come to the end of this project. I'll have a better, clearer relationship with it, perhaps. Which always helps me understand, what do I need to do to take care of myself? How do I learn how to take care of myself more effectively? I only learn that by listening to myself. And listening, of course, to, supports, experts in the field, all of that. But I think part of the journey for a lot of us, once we've had that support, is actually learning how can we implement it? How can we continue that practice of taking care of ourselves, of managing our wellness without someone telling us this is what you have to do. It can be hard sometimes. Let's see. Oh, and Emily says school is good. I'm glad to hear that. Do you have any exciting projects coming up in school? I know the end of school is coming. Soon it will be summer vacation. So I'm wondering what the last few weeks of school looks like. Do you have an online party? Or a virtual picnic? Oh man, I think I'd like that. A virtual picnic. All right. sometimes with art pieces that I make, if they feel a little more personal, I find myself procrastinating. And I'm wondering now if with all my doodling that maybe I'm procrastinating a little bit. I wonder if anyone else has that experience in their back pocket. So, yeah, I'm going to get to work on this. And now that I've covered up enough of the piece, I think, I can always dip back in later to explore, to add more if I feel up to it. Okay, so I'll put that aside for now. Oh, lovely. And Carlos says there's always space for thee, Mary, as much as you make space for all of us. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that more than anyone knows. I talk about it a lot, but seriously, folks, I appreciate it. I think one of the things I love about the Art Hive movement, something that's helped me in my own journey as an art therapist even though I'm not currently practicing in a traditional way, most of what I do is public practice, like hanging out here. What I love about the Art Hive world is that we kind of strip away that idea of hierarchy, right? There's not some idea of me sitting here so I can be here to fix you or do this for you. No, it's I'm here with you and you're here with me. Even if you're not, if I'm not aware of you being here, hello to everyone who might be listening or watching or listening once it's archived. For example, we're still together in some strange way. We're still connected in some interesting way. I think that only happens when each of us makes space for that vulnerability and makes space for allowing ourselves to be on the level with folks in some way, to be able to meet them where they're at and allow them to meet us where we're at. So that's something. And Emily, through Laura, says, oh, no sort of virtual end of year parties that you know of. It sounds like you have pretty good teachers, though. Wouldn't surprise me if they do something special for everybody. I don't know what, but that could be kind of cool. And Carlos responding to the oh, you've got it. He says, not procrastination, says Carlos. Procrastinating. Slow clap for Carlos. That was the best. Okay, so now what am I going to do? You know what? I think I'm going to jump in with creating that. Do we have an answer on that, whether it's weft or warp? The lines, the sort of strings going down to weave through. I'm going to start creating that with paper. So I'm going to introduce an X-Acto knife. So just a heads up for folks who might not want to see that. If you want to, that's cool. But I'm going to be working with that. And I'm going to be working with a ruler to put that lid there so I don't lose it. So all I'm going to do, and I'm not going to expect myself to be perfect and have really excellent lines that are so perfectly, measured out. I'm just going to freehand this as far as measuring. Oh, and we have Laura says, yes, she's a great teacher. So that's fantastic. Now, folks who enjoy collaging or paper art with X-Acto knives, I honor you here. I've never been very good with X-Acto knives. I think as far as this kind of work goes, I might be a little impatient. I tend to go more often than not stabbing the scissors through to create space, which doesn't give you the nice fine lines that are sometimes really useful to have. And so as you see, basically, I'm just creating that here, right? So if we were calling that the weft for the time being, or the warp, oh, now I'm getting mixed up what I thought it was in my own head. One of those days. Hopefully to do that all across, but you can always add more, you can do fewer. I love experimenting with paper in this way because it's got structure, and the base I'm using is watercolor paper as well, so it's a little firmer than some of the papers I've used in the past. There we go. And you know what, now's a good time to thank everyone as well who contributed last week to our little bus project with all the words and the phrases that people contributed, things they want from the Mobile Art Studio project to become a part of the intention of that project. I've begun working on that piece and developing it a little further. And in the Virtual Art Hive, we had this Tuesday mornings, yeah. I was working on it with some community members and adding in a few other words that we were thinking of. So if anyone has any, hello Momo, additional phrases that they want to include, please feel free. I think it's an ongoing project, and there's lots of rays in that piece, rays of color that I was working on. All right. So this could be a meditative kind of experience. Whoa. Again, the luxury of having time to create every Wednesday afternoon has just been lovely for me. And Momo says, I'm working and listening. Oh, well, I hope you're enjoying your work. And I guess that means you're back from your vacation. You're back into the swing of things. I hope you had a lovely break. And then being back at work is being kind to you. Oh, that's true. And Carlos, again, another wonderful reminder to everyone. Staying hydrated. So again, I know Amanda at the beginning of the stream was out there, outside. Here in Oshawa, it's really, at least it was sunny. Is that another kind of rainstormy cloud I see approaching? But taking care of yourself, finding shady spots, making sure you're drinking water, all of that loveliness. Self-care for our minds, our souls, and our bodies. So important. But I'm not the boss of you. Who am I here telling you all this? Oh my goodness. Okay. This little piece, which is a little bit of adventure for me. Kind of spontaneous, allowing it to be what it needs to be. Come. I'll come back to you later. If I have pieces that are a little bit stubborn that don't want to be a part of this weft, maybe I could listen to that too. Listening to the materials. I guess I talk a lot about dialoguing with art and talking to or with what we create. If folks have any questions about that, because I know that's a strange thing to say sometimes. I say it like everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about, but if you don't, please feel free to let me know so I can explain it, or explain a little bit about how I understand that process. Because depending on what your practice is, what kind of art you make, or what kind of art you love, you might have your own understanding of what it means to dialogue with a piece or talk with a piece. Come. There we go. And yet, Momo says, good reminder. Quite bad at staying hydrated. I'll go make tea. Look at that. Lovely self-care reminders for the community. I know I have a nice cup of tea here. I was going to go for coffee, but my tremors were pretty bad today. So I decided, in a very mature decision, if you ask me, to pass on the coffee today, even though I have a really yummy hazelnut coffee from Brew Wizards. Ah, Brew Wizards. Deadly Grounds coffee is delightful. And shout out to the folks there who always take such good care of me and the community. Board game cafe that feels kind of like an art hive in its own right. One more piece and then I'm done this part of the process. Let's see. And then on to the weaving adventure. Let's see what we got here. There we go. And of course, if other folks you have questions or things, let's see. We can also share techniques about dialoguing with our art, what it means to us, to spend time with what we create. There we go. Oh, that's fun. Hoo-hoo-hoo. Oh, wow. That's super fun. I kind of want to just play with that for a little while. So I wonder if I do a close-up, if that will help at all. Well, not help. I'm sure you guys understand. Folks understand what I'm doing here. But that's kind of fun. All right, on to the weaving part. Let's move this up a little bit. So I begin. This is also where I find out how many little pieces I've made and how the weave will unfold, or not unfold, follow through. Because I think one of the important pieces about weaving is that it has an odd number of, if we call it threads in the weft or the warp. Let's see what we got here. Actually, this paper is strong enough that I could probably treat it almost like a textile weaving. Unlike the tissue paper that I was working with before. So let's see what happens. Where do I want this piece to sit? Maybe down here. And now comes the time where I begin talking to myself. Hello, Laura. And I know, yeah, it looked like a lantern before. That's what I was thinking too. And Emily says, what? To the lantern or to the cool paper effect that happened? It's kind of cool. It's fun playing with paper. Paper arts often get forgotten about. We spend so much time painting on things or drawing on things or using the paper as its own, as like a carrier of the art, that we sometimes forget it's really, really cool to play with on its own. That you can create such cool things. And this might also be, my desire to create something like this might also be attached to the pop-up book. I did a little bit of a shallow dive into pop-up book art a few weeks ago and considered, oh, should I try? Like, I've never made any pop-up art before in that way. And there are so many amazing techniques you can use. Let's see. Ah, cool paper. Well, thank you. Just paper I made myself. I wonder if it's easier to start up here. This paper is a little bit, oh, there we go, a little bit grumpy. So it's, what becomes clear now is some of the places, where I didn't cut through as neatly as I could have. No judgment, Mary, no judgment. But we'll use that. We'll find what our top and our bottom is, and we'll weave between those 2 points. Oh, and Momo says, wow, I want to do a pop-up book. Great idea. I know, it would be so much fun. I think it would take a certain amount of patience, which, as folks know, I don't always have. I kind of just run into things. I just jump in. But we're lucky enough, we inherited, we had surrendered, donated to us, a few excellent books about pop-up art. And there's just so many things. It's like you wouldn't even, there's so many things you can do with pop-up art that I hadn't even thought of. You know, you tend to think of the storybooks we used to have when we were kids, maybe, or maybe if you're super fancy, the little things, the windows that slide in and out. But there is like endless possibilities. Just requires a little bit more patience, maybe a little experimentation off screen to get the hang of it. But if there is anyone out there who loves working with paper, and Momo, I think you like working with paper, so who knows, maybe that can become something, like we can each in our own way work towards that. All right. So I have the sense of the bottom, the top, where I can weave between. And now I just continue weaving. So I'm going to try and get as close as I can here. And you'll see why I created or wanted to have the paper created before the live stream so I could get down to this. Because if this paper was wet, I think it would be a lot trickier to work with. Boop, boop, boop. And I like the idea of playing with things going off the edge of this as well. I want it to be a little messy, a little wild within this structure. Something very satisfying about that. Something that has structure but can still be a little wild, a little all over the place. But contained all the same. It's like safe space for certain things that we feel uncomfortable about or worry about. We all need a place to put those things. And art can be a great place to put those things. All right. There are some fantastic paper artists out there. I was trying to think of course, I have found a whole bunch of them that I've been following, that I've loved for a long time. Oh, and now of course I can't remember their names. If you have any favorite weaving artists or paper, textile, mixed media artists, please feel free to put their names in the links. Okay. And I might start overlapping as well. I'm just doing a straight under, over kind of weave right now, but there's room for deviating from that. And I think I will deviate from that. In fact, let's see. Because it would be interesting if the artist card, the gallery card, could perhaps be part of this piece. So it lives with it wherever it goes. Perhaps I'm picking up a little bit, again, revisiting the theme we had last week of intention and kind of the contracts we make with ourselves. Did anyone create a contract with themselves, a lovely self-care contract, or whatever kind of contract, after that live stream? Of course, you don't have to tell me. That's a personal question, isn't it? I know it got me thinking again. Okay, so how's that looking? How's that looking? Oh, Carlos is saying this is looking really good so far. Wow, it's just like reading my mind. So let's see if I can find, yeah, a little bit of that, please. And this is another great project for keeping the hands busy, you know. It's immersive. I think that's a word to describe it. I don't know how many folks were able to tune in to the live stream Instagram artist chat we had yesterday with Noah Reynoso, a printmaker and activist from Ottawa. Such a lovely chat. He's just such an extraordinary human being. And just talking about what lino cut does for him. How it helps them immerse themselves and get into a flow state. And when they're there, that's all they're thinking about, which I guess is good if you're ever working with blades. It's good to just focus. You don't want to be in too many places. If you're working with sharp things, safety first. But definitely, like, it was nice to be reminded of how some art making is more physical than other kinds of art making, and actually being able to feel something take shape underneath, like under your hands or from your hands. That's a really powerful, powerful experience. So maybe that's why I went a little more tactile this week. Who knows? I think I might dig around in the supplies and see if I can find some lino cutting tools as well. Because that would be really fun to get back to that as well. I haven't done it in forever. The last time I did it was actually when I made, 8 years ago, I made the LivingRoom sign. Our logo is from a lino cut that I messed up on. Because I forgot, because when I was doing the block at that point in time, I'd forgotten that any words you put into a lino, like a block print situation, have to be backwards. And I totally forgot about that. So, thus, our logo is a reverse, it's a flip of some wonky art that I made with a kind of messed up lino cut. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. I love the texture. I love what happened when we played with that after the fact. And yeah, it's super, super cool. But kind of our branding is based on a mistake. I also like that. It's a nice reminder that perfection has never, ever really been a part of the LivingRoom's brand. Expert mentality. We respect knowledge, but you don't necessarily need to be perfect. Now, start playing with this. Now, I'm not going to glue down the tabs on the side. I'm feeling like I might soon. I might start just using a bit of glue stick to keep those in place, but I don't want to, I might want to move things around, and I might want to add in some other elements as we go. I do have some yarn on hand, some ends that I have that might find their way into this piece as well. And Laura says the logo is wonderful and wonky like most humans, definitely like me. And Momo says, what? It's such a cool story, Mary. I always forget that about lino cut. Yeah, I know. I think it suits the LivingRoom very much. It suits that everything, you know, everything about that sign, about our brand came from me jumping into something and forgetting just to do the basic checks about what's important about lino cut. But it makes sense for us. Again, it makes sense. And I love that we were able to take something that on another day, if I was in a different place, I might have just thrown it out. I might have just gone, you know, and tossed it. But again, sometimes those accidents, those happy art accidents, introduce a whole new way of looking at things, help you find a new perspective. And on that day, they certainly did. Yeah, It's fun. It's super fun. And if you're going to make a mistake, art is a wonderful place to make it. Try making mistakes with your art. It's easier said than done. Okay. I feel like I should be singing to folks, or someone should be singing to fill the silence as I weave. It's a little... I'm going to imagine people singing out there. Just because. It's one thing I miss about the studio. I miss the voices, the sounds of things. I miss singing. I miss the people who would come in and play the piano. I don't think we'll be able to fit the piano into the mobile art studio. I've been thinking about it, like trying to find a way, but I just don't think that's going to be possible. So we're going to have to figure out another home for that. Another place where we can access it and still play with it. Unless, of course, Jen French's office is happy having it there. Shout out to Jen French's office for fostering our piano. Interesting. So I'm going to have let's have some loose threads and tabs. And I am just randomly selecting these pieces. Could totally try to be a little more specific about choosing colors to create different patterns. And Laura's saying, yes, us too, with the sounds of the studio. But maybe a guitar, though. Oh, yeah, we will have guitars on the mobile studio. Absolutely. They will be coming around with us. Because there's always somebody. When I worked at Cornerstone, the men's shelter here in Oshawa, when I first started working with them as an art therapist, the executive director, fantastic person, Ed Kortz, who was the executive director there, had the best, loveliest viewpoint on creativity and community like that, and communities like everywhere. And wherever you have a group of people, maybe more than 5, chances are you have the makings of a band there. Chances are there's someone who knows how to sing. Chances are there's someone who knows how to play guitar. Chances are there's somebody who's got enough rhythm that they want to play the drums, even if it's just tapping things out on a table or a bucket. Chances are you have people who have stories to tell through song. And I just loved that. Again, just recognizing the resources in the room. What's already there. We don't have to go finding it. We don't have to go far afield to find these lovely, creative people. Artists are everywhere. Not always recognized. And sometimes we like being a little incognito, I think, too. It's important to have your anonymous days. Your down days. Come here, come here, come here. Definitely a guitar and a ukulele. We have someone in the community who's fostering our ukulele right now as well. So it's getting used on a regular basis and getting some love. Let's see. Oh yes, this piece. I'm going to turn it on its side to weave this one in. Come, paper. Definitely a live stream of me talking to my art supplies. And Laura says, I love it, so true. This is why music has always been so important to me, always been there in my life. I have a poem somewhere. Laura, yes, please find that poem. I remember that's when we first had you, I think it was a Instagram artist chat that we were doing with you. And the first time we tried it, it just wouldn't work for whatever reason. We couldn't figure it out. But you stayed in the chat of the live stream. And I believe you shared a poem as a part of that live stream as well. That was awesome. Poetry and music. Everywhere. Now. That could be a hidden seam there. Let's see. So Laura's maybe reaching for a poem or looking for a poem or thinking of a poem. For folks who might be joining us, welcome, welcome, welcome to the live stream. You know me, I'm Mary Kay from the Living Room Community Art Studio. So great to have you here, whether you're watching live or whether you're tuning in once things have been archived. It's lovely to know you're out there, and I do know you're out there, so thank you for that. What are you working on? What are folks working on? What are folks thinking about these days? Are you feeling a little bit weary like I am? It's okay if you're not. Just using this time for self-care, using this time to create. Get excited about creating. To remind ourselves that what we have to say matters. And as Carlos was mentioning earlier, that safe space. Everybody needs a safe space to feel what they feel, even if what they're feeling might not feel very safe sometimes. I think especially then we need that more, perhaps. I'm feeling safe, but I'm definitely feeling weary. Being reminded by those feelings to take care of myself, take a breath, perhaps slow down a little bit. And Carlos says, I now have Maxwell Kitty sat alongside me and he's watching the telly live stream. He's a contented kitty. Hello, Maxwell. Hello. Hello. Some people send me pictures of their animals watching the live streams because I forget that people can watch them on their televisions and said devices, which is a strange thought for me. But it's always such a pleasure to see people's animals watching along. I guess depending on what I make, I wonder if there's certain things that animals like me creating more than others. I mean, we say the Art Hive is for everyone, and I'm assuming that's animals included. But hello to Maxwell. Okay. Oh, and if I feel this is really nice to kind of just run a hand over here. This is really nice. But I've decided I am going to weave that in. I'm going to create some additional layers by doing so. Ah, there we are, there we are. And maybe now would be a good time. You know what I'm going to do? I think I'm going to, well, first I'm going to grab a little tool here. I'm going to push that. I want the green to show underneath. And oh, look at that. Oh, that helps. So if I just want to nudge things down a little bit more. Normally when you're weaving textiles, there's a tool that helps you do this, a comb that you would use. But I wasn't sure what the equivalent would be with paper. Well, in this case, it's a stylus, or I suppose you could use a little crochet hook. Whatever works. Because I like the look of it being a little cluttered. So I am going to I think I'm going to glue down some of these tabs. And the good thing about using a glue stick Not the most powerful glue in the world. So if I do want to lift anything up, I should be able to. Oh, and look at you hanging out there. I actually want you under. I wouldn't mind having you over still. Talking to my art. And I know we've had conversations about people talking to themselves before. Have we ever had any conversations about people talking to their art? So you can dialogue with your art. But there's got to be other people out there who talk to their art like I do when you're making it. Or just stay glued down. My goodness. Behave, paper. Just going to flip it over for a moment. Oh, and this side is much easier as well to look at the things I'm learning. So nice tips and tricks. So at least when working with watercolor, it's much easier to secure tabs and move the papers around from the smooth side. That makes sense. Come, there we go. Where was that piece? All right, there we go. And Carlos says, just, oh, lovely, following up on the weary thread, the weary conversation about weariness. Weary is okay. Weary can encourage resting and fills up our spell slots for future days. You're right, it does. 8 hours of rest. Get all those spells back. We don't need to power through. We can take time, settle down, rest up, and just be. Oh, Max Kitty also informs me, via his actions or lack of actions, that we could all be more cat-like in terms of self-care sometimes. Hydrate as needed, get some om-nom food as needed, gain some sun as and when needed, dialogue with self and others as needed. But Max Kitty isn't the boss of us, so we can do what works best for us. And although he'd be a good boss, I think Max would be a very good doctor. I'm going to call Dr. Max. If I have any other questions, I'll arrange an appointment with Dr. Max. And Momo said, I think we've had that conversation in one of those times that we talked about Pat Allen's studio process. Yes, I talked to my art since then. Oh, lovely. Yeah. Pat B. Allen. That's a extraordinary human being. Yeah, the witness intention writing process with your art. But also just, I think a lot of us do it without knowing formally what that process is. And I've always been a big fan of talking things out with oneself, and talking it out loud. I mean, you might not do that with the witness writing intention process. I don't know if that's part of Pat's process, but I find it really helpful to say things out loud. Because I think sometimes I spend so much time in my own head, and other artists out there, other creators, or just people who work really hard at various things might relate to this. We spend a lot of time in our own minds, and we might even journal or write things out, which is fantastic. But I find it really helpful to actually find a space where you feel safe enough to talk to yourself out loud. Helps me when I'm having really difficult times, or when I'm feeling like I really want to reason something out. You can, it's kind of like another version of doing a pros and con list sometimes, but just through hearing the words and hearing how I'm processing things and feeling it in my body, feeling my voice in my body, it makes a difference. I find it helpful. And that's just something I like to do, right? And Carlos says, aha, yeah, I've talked to my art a few times too. As odd as it sounds, the big question I find myself asking the art is, What are you doing? Yeah, it's a good one. I always thought it was me asking me. Now I'm not so sure. It may be more directed at the art process than I had originally intended. Yeah, there's something going on. And it is, I suppose, us talking to ourselves, dialoguing with ourselves, dialoguing with our intuition or our creative self. But, there is a kind of subconscious level there. Maybe we're trying to access or connect with a piece of ourselves that is difficult to connect with otherwise. And that's a lovely, lovely thing. Not lovely that we can't connect with it as often as we'd like, but lovely that there are opportunities to connect with it if we allow them, if we have the space, the time, the comfort to let ourselves, hear ourselves, hear ourselves, be heard by ourselves, and listen to ourselves. Yeah, so important. I think it's one of the things too why when we're watching films or listening to songs, like music, it's easy to sing. Not easy for everyone to sing, but we don't seem to have the same stigma about singing to ourselves, even in the privacy of our own homes, as we do with regards to talking to ourselves in our own homes or private spaces. We're talking to the supports we know or believe are out there. That's, I suppose, another form of prayer, but I view it as something much more practical than that, I guess. Sacred, just as sacred, but a little more practical, if that makes any sense. Of course, it is that do what's best for you. Everyone will have something that works for them. That's just something I find helpful for myself. There we go. And I'm going to flip it over to see if I can nudge that down a little bit more now that I've realized it's easier to do on the other side. And I might bring this piece into the writer's workshop tomorrow. So just a reminder, folks, that tomorrow morning, which I think is Thursday. Yeah, Thursday morning at 10 a.m., we have the writer's Zoom. It's back now with Danielle. We're starting out every other week. And maybe eventually we'll go to every week if folks are interested. But sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of a break, as long as people realize that it's there. It's there for you to join if you like, 10 a.m. till 11 a.m. And people were asking how it unfolds, what happens in one of those groups. And really, it's super laid back. So Danielle will usually, after, checking in, having that little bit of social time off the top, there will usually be some kind of theme that emerges from that chat or that connects with what Danielle was thinking of. And Danielle will use that as an opportunity to provide a prompt, a spark, a question that we ask ourselves that we then spend time writing on, letting out. If people feel like sharing what they've written at the end of the group, they're welcome to. But I find it's just really lovely and relaxing to have a space to create, to write in the stillness with other people, not alone, but with other people. That's permission to create that I don't often give myself in that exact way. Similar to this, if you're making art with me right now, you know what I'm talking about. Good to be with other folks who get it. It's good to be with other folks who are sharing a similar creative energy. Non-judgmental space. We have people who are familiar with writing. There's people who aren't. There's people like me who love writing, but haven't given themselves the time or the space to do it in a very long time. It's just nice to return to that space every once in a while. All right, and I'll push that one down as well. So yes, writers group Thursday morning, 10 to 11 a.m. Every other week right now on Zoom. So as of today, which is what is it? June 16th? June 17th is the next group. So check our events page to learn more about it and get the Zoom link, all of that lovely stuff. And I suppose on the conversation of the topic of talking to your art, what are some things that people have learned from their art? I have a feeling it will overlap quite nicely with everything else we've been thinking about and talking about today. I imagine if you're anything like me in the creative process of connecting with your work, sometimes it surprises you. Definitely catch you off guard. Oh, okay, so that wants to be there, so I'm going to let that be there. The moment when you were intending to continue with the weave, but have jumped a little bit, and that's okay. It is nice working with, some of these strips are just graph paper and different found object paper, but it's nice weaving with watercolor paper. Something has a little more structure. That's nice. And Momo says, good question. I don't know. I'll ask my art. Everyone, right now, ask your art. Ask your art what it wants you to know. What does it need you to know? Next week's live stream, I'm just here staring at my art. The art's talking to, it's not me, it's the art. That's me being a little bit silly. Although, Stranger Things. All right. Getting excited because I might be able to finish this piece, at least the weaving of it, by the end of this live stream. Which I don't always, you know me. I always try to come back to the pieces I'm working on, and oftentimes a piece that I've worked on in a live stream will show up in another work of art, which is always nice. There's never a shortage of materials, of supplies. Should I try? No. See, my art just told me there that it wasn't, it said go with the flow. And Wendy said, I just asked the paper I stamped if it wanted to get together with my beads. It said no. Oh, well, now you know. That's information. I would love to try that one day, though. Stamping, I mean, I have a lot of lovely stamps, that is true. What I don't have right now is ink. I have a few kinds of office ink pads and refillers, things like that. But I know that stamping is now quite an art form all on its own. I think that's an understatement. There's so many special, beautiful kinds of inks out there, embossing inks, inks that are like glue so that you can sprinkle, like glitter and things like that on them. In Oshawa, we have a lovely store called Class Act that sells and provides all sorts of scrapbooking supplies. And I know they've got lots of lovely goodies there. But as far as the bead making and the paper bead making that you're doing, Wendy, I was so excited to see you doing that. Again, love playing with paper and seeing where it takes us. Here, let's see. Let's have a look on this. A little close up and see. Okay. So I am liking what I'm seeing here. And it does feel good. It feels good to touch. I love a good tactile piece of art. There's something very soothing about that alone. But I'll definitely be playing with the colors on this. All right, back to it. Let's see. I need a, there, that's what I want. I want a really nice, bright, something bright there. And this is also, when I'm working on pieces like this, where I'm doing layers, when I'm exploring that idea of, you know, feeling through color, through line, through shape, texture, exploring those aspects of art making. I'm always surprised by what my color palettes turn out to be. Because there's times in my life where I feel like in a project like this, I'm like, oh, I'm making something very contrasted. It's totally contrasted. And then afterwards I realize, actually, it's not. Even when I'm trying to use a varied color palette, I manage to, everything, again, I guess speaking, the colors are speaking to one another somehow. They're in relationship with one another. Even when I'm trying to have them oppose and contrast one another, which is still a relationship, I suppose. Oh, maybe I want that to be... Where did that little tool go? Ah, here we are. That's, I think, what I want. Just wiggle, wiggle, wiggle that down. Being a little gentler with just the regular paper that I'm using. And folks, thank you for being a part of this today and watching. I know this is a slow process. It's a much gentler, slower interesting, process than some of the things I do during the live stream. A little less dynamic. But I think it's important to make space for that too. Make space for the slow art. And then, of course, if people want to speed it up, if you're watching it archived, you can do that too. I'm not offended by that. Let us introduce some... do I want more of that? Maybe, maybe, maybe. Do, 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 do. I think it might be why, just thinking about slow art again, it might be why, I mean, you don't see a whole lot of knitting on YouTube going down. Although maybe you do. Maybe I'm just not looking for the knitting. I'm not looking hard enough to find it. As far as streamers go, I think a lot of streamers try to choose things that are a little more dynamic, a little more engaging visually. Come. I'm going to pull those down a little bit. And it's interesting because even though I'm using paper, I'm encountering some of the same tension difficulties that I might if I was weaving with fiber, with another kind of fiber. As you can see, it's a little easier to see from this side. And this side actually I love as well, so I might make this a two-sided piece. Because I'm liking the light and the gray contrasts on this page and kind of the color that's coming through in those transparencies. Maybe this is when I try and work this down a little bit. And introduce a few more strands. Maybe this one. Just lift it up. I'm just going to guide this and follow the course of the other ones. Again, it's really nice to work with the strength of the watercolor paper. And you see how detailed you can get this kind of weaving if you like. Layering paper upon paper over areas that have already been woven to create impact, to create a story within that art. And I like the story that it's telling, although I will have to spend some time with it to figure it out. Just being a part of this flow, this art conversation. Come here. There we go again, reasoning with my artwork. I'm going to glue it down a little bit and then take a look and highlight the areas where I might add language to this piece, because the beginning of the live stream when I started working on this, I mentioned that I want this to be, I wanted to incorporate writing as well. The use of language and art, and Simone was suggesting having an artist gallery card that could go along with it, depending on what it was that I wanted to be said. And I'm thinking that it might be nice to simply incorporate it into the piece itself. So on some of these pieces where I've overlapped and left larger strips, I think that's where I'll begin adding words, adding the language. Where did you go? Do, 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 do. There we are. There we go, just stabilizing that a little bit. Well, this guy doesn't want to be stabilized there, so maybe I'll listen. Oh, maybe I will secure that too, as long as I'm at it. And although I love everything coming off the sides, it'll be interesting to spend some time with this afterwards and see, well, what do I want to do? Do I want to trim everything down? Do I want to focus in on a smaller section of this artwork? All a part of the process. All a part of the process. So as we're coming to the end of this live stream, this lovely virtual Art Hive hanging out time, how are folks feeling out there? Has this been something interesting for you? Has it been helpful? Have you found or discovered something about yourself or your creative process that perhaps you didn't know before? And if not, that's okay too. Have you found a little resting time for yourself, a little time to take a breath, maybe refuel a bit, take care of that weariness? Speaking for myself. I think I have. And again, that all comes down to you folks. Thank you so much for being here. And I do like what's happening with those purples and yellows. Do I have any more of those? Of course, what's great, I've also got, now I have all of these lovely strips that I can return to and I can stockpile and continue working with. Don't know if you can hear the sound of the paper. Momo says, interesting. I keep discovering that I can't create on commission. Interesting. So does that mean people have loved your work and appreciated your work and asked you to create something for them? That can be a challenge. It can even be strange in situations like this, or like a workshop situation where people invite you to create a specific thing. Making space for what you want is always a part of the process. And I find sometimes I have to manage that part of myself. When I think of commission, like doing things on commission, oftentimes it has to do with getting paid and feeling responsible to someone else. And I really have to manage that relationship with money. Not how much I save money, not that kind of relationship. But what happens when I'm creating and I know that someone is paying me for that. It's easy to kind of lose sight of the joy or let the joy slip out of it. And it's definitely an opportunity for that inner critic to creep back in and start being bossy. I don't know. I might be the only one. But creating art on demand, and demand is a very extreme word because oftentimes it's not on demand. No one's sitting there over your shoulder. But Momo says, no, just something I found out. And yet it might be what you say. Interesting. Oh, I remember the first year I got paid to work in the living room. And it, happens on and off. Sometimes I have years where I'm volunteering. Sometimes I have years where we have funding and I can pay myself a little bit, which is always lovely. But that first year where there was funding and I got to pay myself, it was the most stressful year ever. Something happened in me where I had a very difficult time accepting that, that nothing had changed. Nothing had changed other than the fact that someone was finally able to support me through this work. But I think I had to really look at something, a switch that had flipped in my mind. And suddenly as I was getting paid, I almost made it hard work somehow. Like I couldn't enjoy it in the same way I used to. So I definitely had to talk myself down and out from that place. So something to consider, I suppose. I wonder if anyone else has ever experienced that. The sort of relief, how sometimes something is easier and more enjoyable to do when you're not getting paid. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be at all, but just one of those interesting things that our brains do to ourselves. Okay. Okay. So coming close to the end here, and Laura says, so Laura says, I can't find my Facebook notes. Apparently they were discontinued in October. Oh no. Supposed to be archived somewhere, but can't find them. I have poems and some other things there. Anyone have experience recovering them? So recovering files from Facebook. That's interesting. You know what, I'm imagining there's someone out there who does. And what an interesting note to kind of wrap things up on, that idea of recovering and pulling things back. And even thinking about dealing with technology can sometimes make my brain go poof. But there's got to be someone out there who does have skill or knowledge in that area. So if you are one of those people and you might be able to help Laura recover some of her files, first of all, again, I'm so sorry that happened, Laura. That's never a good feeling thing, to go looking for something and find that it's not there in a place you thought it was safe and accessible. I'm so sorry, but hopefully it's not gone forever. For example, maybe, are there anyone you might have shared those files with? Are there comment threads or places that can be accessed through other pages that you might have on Facebook? I'm not sure. But all in all, I mean, if there's someone out there who knows specifically how to tackle this, you've maybe experienced it before, Laura, can I invite them to reach out and message you through Facebook to help you with that? Because I know sometimes that can be helpful. And every once in a while, the Facebook team, I call them, I'm not sure. I imagine there's so many people out there working for Facebook, and they aren't always, as responsive as they could be, as they should be. But there might be a way to reach out to them too and see what can be done to access those files. And Momo says, oh no, I never used Facebook Notes. When things like these happens, I just Google it. More often than not, I found an answer. And that's true as well. Google it, because if it's happened to you, Laura, unfortunately, it's probably happened to a lot of other people out there as well. So again, use that hive mind to gather those resources and figure things out. And a nice reminder, I suppose, to keep things we treasure in different places. Maybe things online, but also a good old-fashioned book. Maybe. I don't know. It's such a strange time we're living in, folks. Such a strange time, but I am definitely so happy that I'm walking through these times with you. So thank you for that. Yeah. And if you want, just a reminder to create more of that writing, to spend some time on it. Tomorrow morning, Thursdays at 10 to 11, you can join us and maybe recover some of those thoughts. I know sometimes when I've created and lost things in the past, and you don't need to come to the group to do this, but if you have an inkling of the core or the seed of it, sometimes it's a really interesting process to revisit it as well. You can't recreate exactly what was lost, but sometimes by revisiting that thought and that intention of the creative piece, it can take you somewhere new and exciting in a similar area. I don't know. Just a thought I've had from my own experiences of losing things. Oh, losing journals, losing sketchbooks, losing diaries. So many little losses like that that can sometimes help an artist move forward, although it's not always a comfortable reason to move forward. Yeah, Laura says I've been Googling. Yes, please PM me if you know if you know everyone. Thanks so much. And Laura says I keep most writings on paper, but some are or were there. Yeah, and Momo says if I have time, I will try to be there. I'm back to work now. For the writers group, fantastic. Well, thank you again. If you're working, I understand if you can't be here, and I appreciate that folks drop by when they can to say hi and to create and to experience this community with us. It's lovely, but yeah, interesting. All of these conversations are giving me good food for thought on processes of creation, vulnerability, loss, recovery, recreation perhaps, keepsakes, and how treasured and how extraordinary our voices are. So that's where this piece is at right now. I might bring it into the group tomorrow and work on it with a little bit of writing. We'll see. We will see. Folks, thank you so much for being here and being here for one another. Again, it's always such a lovely experience for me. No matter where or how I come into this space, I always leave feeling renewed, feeling a little more inspired, a little more grounded. And coming in today from being in a weary place, I'm still feeling weary, but I'm feeling renewed. And I have you to thank for that. And the art, I suppose. Thank you, art. It's not talking to me yet, but I'll spend some time with it later. And oh my goodness. And Emily says, Laura says, good idea. Emily said I should know what it was because I wrote it. Yeah, sometimes that's what happens. It's in you. It's in us somewhere. And I think we've talked about this before, those moments where you're writing something important and you forget to press save, or you click a button and it all disappears. And in those moments, sometimes, if you can't recover it, take a deep breath and trust that it's in you and revisit that creative space again. I think Emily's got a good idea there. And Laura says, Emily wrote a poem. Does Emily want to share the poem with us as we wrap up today's live stream? You don't have to, Em. You don't have to. But I think that would be a really lovely, interesting thing if you wanted to. Because I wouldn't want to make you skip school to come to the writing group tomorrow. What do you think? What do you think, Emily? Oh, this is beautiful. All right, folks, get ready. I'm going to read Emily's poem. Jimmy. Jim, Jimmy, Jim, Jimmy, Jim, 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 meow. I hope it's okay. I added in a little musicality there. However, maybe it doesn't deserve that. Let me try again. Let's see. Jimmy. Jim, Jimmy, Jim, Jimmy, Jim, Jim, Jim. Meow. That was a little more serious. I'm not sure which version I like better. Emily, you let me know. Oh, haha, Laura says I nailed it. That's good. Thank you. Excellent. And Laura says, the cat is life. If I didn't work, we would. Oh, well, that's okay. We're right. I know folks are working out there, so you can't be everywhere I am all at the same time. That would be weird. And Carlos says, I heard the art. You heard the art? What did it say? Thanks so much, all, for a great hang time space. Have a safe, restful, and groovy week. Be excellent to yourself and each other, y'all. Have a good one. Thank you for that, Carlos. I reflect that back at the community 1,000,000%. Oh, it looks like Momo liked that poem as well. So, you know what? That's going to be in the comments. But I'm going to make sure maybe I write it down or take a screenshot of it or something, then it can be saved forever. And maybe, who knows, if we're looking for a theme in tomorrow's group, maybe I'll share that poem as well. If with Emily's consent. Everyone, thank you so much for hanging out and being here today. Thank you to folks who are watching it later on once it's been archived. You are all contributing to the creative energy of this space, and I can't wait until we can be out there in community again connecting with folks. But in the meantime, it is quite lovely to be here doing this as well. Different, but somehow equally rewarding. Differently rewarding. Yeah? So take care of yourself. Hopefully you can go out and get some sunshine, some fresh air now. And take care of yourselves. Take care of yourselves, everyone. Thank you so much for being out there in the world and doing what you do and making all the wonderful things you make. You're making the world a better place as you do that. So thank you. All right then. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And I will see you again, if not tomorrow morning in Writers Group, next Tuesday for another excellent Instagram artist chat, and again next Wednesday right here, right on Facebook for another live stream. Okay? Okay. Bye, everybody.